Tonight on Primetime, pressure mounts on British Prime Minister Keir Starmer as he faces a bruising cabinet meeting, while a potential leadership race that could create the UK's next Prime Minister starts to gather pace. Who will be the UK's next Prime Minister then, and can Starmer possibly survive? Well, from London now, our correspondent Ollie Barrett has more on this growing pressure facing Keir Starmer as divisions emerge within Labour following the local election results and tensions spill into today's cabinet discussions.
Well, this may have been Keir Starmer's slightly strange second cabinet meeting in a week, by which I mean that last time around we had all sorts of speculation about an imminent leadership challenge against him. After that cabinet meeting, in which we're told the leadership issue wasn't actually discussed out loud, his health secretary, Wes Streeting, resigned from cabinet and had a very strong critique of Keir Starmer's premiership so far, and made it very clear that he believes there should be a new leader of the Labour Party and new Prime Minister. And so this cabinet meeting was kicked off, we understand from officials, by a welcome to the new health secretary, James Murray, who has taken on that position after the resignation of Wes Streeting. But then we're told that the cabinet meeting really focused on what officials call delivery. The Prime Minister, according to officials, told his ministers the government's made really good progress in the first 2 years in office, as indicated by the number of bills passed in the first session. We're told the Prime Minister talked about the National Health Service, about the economy, about GDP numbers that we've seen recently in positive terms as evidence of the government's achievements so far. But all of this with the backdrop of ministers knowing that there may well be an imminent leadership challenge against Keir Starmer if or when Andy Burnham, the former outgoing mayor of Manchester, is able to win the by-election that will take place in the coming weeks in Makerfield in the northwest of England. If Andy Burnham does indeed win that seat for Labour, it is very much expected at that point that he would head to Westminster and soon after try and remove Keir Starmer and replace him. That follows a series of controversies, of missteps, of U-turns by Keir Starmer's government, and dozens of his own MPs calling for him to step aside after a series of disastrous local elections. The opposition parties say the government is causing chaos. They say that Keir Starmer is now effectively leading a lame duck administration. But Keir Starmer, as I say, in this cabinet meeting, trying to put on a brave face, trying to show that his government is still getting on with the job and focused on that key word that's been used several times in the readout from officials today of delivery. Ollie Barrett in London for A News.
Well, joining me now is the political analyst Andy Preston to discuss the latest developments in this growing pressure on Keir Starmer and the internal turmoil within the Labour Party. Very good to see you as always, Andy. Look, we've all been in awkward meetings, I think, but this cabinet meeting, I think, for Keir Starmer surely takes the biscuit, doesn't it?
This must be the most awkward meeting in the world, where you're the boss, but everybody who is there and effectively working for you wants you to leave, wants you out. And not everyone has come out explicitly and said they want him to go, but they do. Look, politicians are... They need to be re-elected. They need to be popular with voters, and Keir Starmer is a major barrier to that. So everybody in that room, Guy, wants to save their own skin. They want to be re-elected, and that means getting rid of Keir Starmer and replacing him with almost anybody else. So it's the most awkward, unpleasant thing, and it must be excruciating. I understand that they haven't actually talked about Keir Starmer leaving formally, but it's obviously the elephant in the room.
And somebody not in that room, but sort of looming large in the background, of course, is Andy Burnham. I mean, let's just talk about Mr. Burnham. There is a joke circulating on social media that goes like this, Andy. It says a Blairite, a Brownite and a Corbynite walk into a bar and the barman says, "What can I get you, Mr. Burnham?" He is someone who clearly is an effective communicator, liked by many people, but also has a reputation for shifting allegiances and political perspectives, doesn't he?
He does. Whether he is the worst at that I don't know. I would actually say he probably isn't. I think all politicians, what they have to do is they have to tailor their message to the audience, and you word it different ways and you might emphasize different things. So there's always a little bit of playing things down, certain beliefs, and exaggerating other beliefs to handle a particular audience. Andy Burnham has quite a bad name, but not the worst. I mean, he's been through a long era, of course. I mean, he was an MP a long time ago under Tony Blair, a senior politician. Then he was a senior politician under Gordon Brown. He has morphed, as the Labour Party has. But of course, I think what he would say is that times change, views change, and I'll change my views with the new environment. But he certainly has adapted his views. But I think, to be honest, we could say that of pretty much every politician.
And Andy, he's embarking on this route back potentially to power via the Makerfield by-election. It's a region relatively close to where he's well known and well liked. We've heard other news as well that Oasis, the rock band, are going to allow him to use one of their songs to create a promotional video. So there's an awful lot of effort and presumably money that's going into this campaign. But there's always a chance in that area that he gets beaten by Reform.
There is a good chance he gets beaten by Reform. That area, you know, we had our local elections here, not national government, but local government elections here just a matter of weeks ago. And Reform were incredibly strong in the whole of Andy Burnham's patch. You know, what we call Greater Manchester, which is the city of Manchester and the towns around it. Reform stormed that whole area, demolished the Labour Party, of which Andy Burnham is a member and representative. So ordinarily, you would actually think that this by-election would be won clearly by Reform. The thing that might change that is the Andy Burnham factor. He's very, very popular there. Very, very popular. And I think that it's very hard to work out whether his popularity will offset the unpopularity of Labour versus Reform. The current betting markets, there are big betting markets over here on politics and other things. The big betting markets suggest that Andy Burnham is about 60% likely to win, with Reform about 40% likely to win.
Very interesting indeed. And let's just turn now to another one of the leading candidates, Wes Streeting. His resignation, of course, turned private frustration into open confrontation. Do you think, because, of course, Wes Streeting comes from a different wing of the party. Many would describe him as towards the right of the Labour Party. Just give us your view on Mr. Streeting, his chances, you think, in this prospective leadership election, and whether this now signals a war over the future direction, potentially, of the party.
So Wes Streeting is a very, very prominent Labour MP, and until last week a very prominent member of Keir Starmer's government. For a number of months, maybe as many as 9 or 10, he has been promoting himself as the next Prime Minister, and even positioning himself as someone who may well topple his boss, Keir Starmer. So there's been a very strange situation in the cabinet going on for some months now, that very strange dynamic. Wes Streeting is a talented politician, he's a great communicator, he comes from the right side of the Labour Party, the right-hand side. He's a centrist, a Blairite in Tony Blair's sort of political background. He isn't as popular with, as you can imagine, the old-fashioned Labour members and the left-wing Labour members. And there is an emerging chasm now between Wes Streeting and similarly minded Labour politicians and the rest of them. And this is what happens when a leadership is on the way out, when a government is breaking down, the factions emerge and the fighting starts. But to be clear, Wes Streeting would be very, very unlikely to win a leadership election. If Andy Burnham wins this by-election, which looks like 60% likely, then there will be a formal leadership challenge, and Wes Streeting has made it clear that he will join in on that. Everything suggests that he'd be very unlikely to win, Guy, but, and it's a very big but, in these situations, in all political parties, it's often an outsider,
Yes.
someone who is not deemed to be the favourite, often wins. So I wouldn't write Wes Streeting off yet, but he's certainly not a popular choice.
And we know, of course, that from the local election collapse, and also from the very fact that there is this de facto leadership contest taking place already, really, in the shadows, we know that confidence in Keir Starmer has been shattered. But to what extent has confidence in the Labour Party been broken too?
The two go hand in hand. They're not quite the same thing, but of course they're very much related, aren't they? Keir Starmer is the public face of the Labour Party, so when he's unpopular, that will dent Labour. And Keir Starmer is the figurehead of Labour, so when they're unpopular, that dents him. They're both inextricably linked. You know, Labour were not popular. They received a huge parliamentary majority, which gave them extreme power here in the UK, but at the last general election, they only received about 34% of all of the votes cast. So the vast majority of voters didn't want Labour. They weren't popular. And the vast majority of Labour MPs were elected on tiny majorities. That means that if Labour's popularity just dropped a bit, they would lose their seats at the next election. What's happened is the Labour Party's popularity has dropped a huge amount. So all of the Labour MPs, there are pretty much no safe seats anymore. All of the Labour MPs are looking around, seeing that they almost certainly will not be re-elected. They're going to get kicked out of office and lose their jobs. So they've turned on their boss and they're looking for someone else who might raise the party's desperately flagging fortunes. I can't stress enough that the local elections of 2 weeks ago were beyond bad. They were catastrophic for Labour Party, and they've gone into a meltdown and political and existential panic.
And finally, Andy, what do you think is going on in the minds of Camp Starmer at this point? I mean, presumably if Andy Burnham does get re-elected, things look positive, that Keir Starmer will have to then go along with a sort of coronation, if you like. But if he doesn't win, do you think there are some people thinking that maybe it's worth trying to cling on?
I think he will try to cling on, and I've got a couple of reasons for thinking that. First of all is that it's very hard to get prime ministers to leave office. If we think back to Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, they practically had to be dragged out of there, metaphorically dragged out by the heels, clinging onto the door handle. And Keir Starmer has proved himself to be incredibly thick-skinned. And while that is a problem because he doesn't seem to pick up on the subtleties of politics and human relationships, it does mean that he's somewhat impervious to the animosity towards him and the awful atmosphere that must be around in his cabinet. So I think he will have to be dragged out of there. I think if Andy Burnham wins, Keir Starmer's likely to try to see him off in a leadership challenge. If Andy Burnham doesn't win, and someone like Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner formally launch their own challenge to Keir Starmer, I think Keir Starmer would stand a very good chance of winning that. So he's got every reason at this point to hang on in there, and I think he will.
Fascinating stuff. Andy, always great to speak to you. We thank you as always.
Thank you, Guy.
Okay, after the break, we're in Baku for the World Urban Forum, where Azerbaijan is presenting its vision for future cities. Don't go away.
Moi, Luis Moreno Campo, déclare solennellement.
We've seen remarkable developments between Baku and Yerevan.
We are against all of this kind of peace. Russia does not want Pashinyan to win. Russia wants perpetual conflict.
Region that's in conflict or in tension is better for their ability to play a role.
Russian oligarchs are less about money and more about political influence. Russia can make its own interventions through online postings.
Que j'ai rempli mes devoirs et exercerai mes attributions de procureur de la Cour pénale internationale.
Money in politics everywhere is corrupting influence, but when it becomes weaponized by a foreign power.
The main thing we have money. Too much resources, too much money.
The main topic is to change Pashinyan.
They have boss and big boss. Big boss which is in Russia.
L'impartialité et en toute conscience.
We are for pressuring Pashinyan. We are organizing rallies on the streets.
Et que je répéterai le caractère confidentiel des enquêtes.
They are election time. No, and election time is everything binary.
Que remuevan a Pashinyan.
Warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Azerbaijan is putting its urban future on display at the 13th World Urban Forum with a major pavilion highlighting how cities are being rebuilt, redesigned and reimagined. Well, at the centre of that message is a wider question. How does a country combine heritage, sustainability, technology and post-conflict reconstruction into one long-term development vision? Well, A News' Narticek Yahangirli has more.
At the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, the Azerbaijan Pavilion has officially opened at the Urban Expo exhibition. It is the largest national pavilion at the exhibition, covering 1,500 square meters. Pavilion presents Azerbaijan's modern urban planning projects and its approach to sustainable development. Visitors can explore displays about Azerbaijan's urban development projects, the cultural heritage of İçeri Şehir, of environmental initiatives, tourism opportunities and examples of modern architecture. A special focus is placed on reconstruction projects in the Karabakh and East Zangezur regions. The pavilion highlights smart city and smart village projects being developed in the liberated territories, as well as efforts to create a green energy zone in the region. There is a strong focus on post-conflict urban planning and restoration processes throughout the liberated regions. The pavilion also features conference and networking spaces, virtual reality experiences, tourism and cinema corners, masterclasses and areas dedicated to Azerbaijani culture and national cuisine. During WF13, several sessions and discussions will be held at the pavilion. Topics include the Baku Master Plan 2040, digital transformation in energy systems, migration and urban management, and climate-related urban challenges.
And staying with the World Urban Forum, attention is shifting from ambitious declarations to practical implementation as African ministers and international partners work together to define concrete priorities for future of rapidly growing cities. A News' Aytan Shakarova has more.
Day 3 of the World Urban Forum in Baku is shifting the focus from promises to implementation. Ministers, UN agencies and African institutions are meeting to discuss how to turn the Nairobi Declaration, which adopted earlier this year during the Africa Urban Forum, into concrete action. The discussions center on some of the fastest growing urban challenges in the world: housing shortages, land access, infrastructure gaps, climate resilience and urban financing.
It's an opportunity for our different countries to be able to go over the African Union Forum statement and to also share our vision individually in individual countries as far as the Vision 2063. Which is mostly being able to build focus on climate control, resilient homes, and making sure that a home is more of a dignified tool rather than just an asset for the future.
We will have Francophone and Anglophone countries, Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, and many others. I'm working in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we are here with the Minister of Urban Development of this country. The main issues there are informal settlement, issue of mobility in the urban areas, and also the issue of infrastructure. On those issues, the discussion are going to be around financial, but also on technical issues, the development of the urban plans, because there is a lot of issue of land occupation and land planning.
Unlike many high-level forums, today's meeting is designed around adoption rather than debate, with participants expected to agree on implementation priorities and a unified African position ahead of the July 2026 UN review of the new urban agenda. Ayten Shukurova, Ilkim Mehdiyev, A News.
Well, joining me now is a member of the Azerbaijan Parliament, Parvana Valieva, who's here to discuss Azerbaijan's showcase at WUF 13 in Baku and its vision for future cities. Parvana, great to see you. Thank you for coming into the studio to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
Big moment this. I mean, it's taken over the city. We've all been down to the event. And Azerbaijan is using this in a way to position itself, isn't it, as a future cities leader in the world. How big a moment is this internationally?
Yeah, WUF 13 is a big opportunity for Azerbaijan to showcase and demonstrate its best practices in urban development. It's a big opportunity as well as it increases Azerbaijan's global visibility, reputation, because international community entrusted to host WUF 13 to Azerbaijan. We are proud that our country hosting this very important discussion and to contribute to this global dialogue. Azerbaijan has its own very good best practices in Baku city, in Karabakh and in Zengezur region, and different cities. We have very good examples in Ganja, in Şamaxı, as our president during the opening ceremony of the WUF 13 described about the historic and cultural heritage of these cities. And right now the world is changing rapidly, the world urbanizes rapidly, and UN Habitat warned a signal that this is a wake-up call for the world. In the future, 70% of the people will live in the cities. It means that 80% of GDP will be accumulated in the cities, and it will create many significant challenges: clean water, sanitation, food security problem, also for the people, health, safety, and economic problems. That's why we are gathering in Baku in this venue to shape the future cities. We are making important discussions in this venue about future infrastructure, housing, public spaces, digital systems that will shape the future of millions of people, millions of generations to come.
And Baku, of course, is one thing, but also the amazing work, as you touched on, that's going on in the liberated territories. That is also attracting attention too, isn't it? And this post-conflict reconstruction provides so much learning, doesn't it? Do you think the other countries in the world are also taking something from that? Is this learning that actually many other places in the world can also share in?
Yeah, of course, we are sharing our experiences with other countries, with international participants. Also, we are learning from them. This is a stage for this, actually, and post-conflict recovery, we have also a political message to the international community. In our Azerbaijan pavilion, it's demonstrated in the big display, post-conflict recovery, reconstruction of Azerbaijan, because during the 30 years of occupation of Azerbaijan's international recognized territories, massive destruction conducted by Armenia, herbicide committed by Armenia, and we are now building our cities from the scratch, from the ground. We are doing like constructing entire cities, entire villages, hospitals, schools, kindergartens, everything we are doing. At the same time, in parallel to this infrastructure reconstruction, we are doing demining for the safe return of the IDPs, because we had 1 million, nearly 1 million refugee and IDPs that is ethnically cleansed from these areas, and now we are not only rebuilding, but also we can call it restoration of justice. Now these people come back their homes, and we are building their houses. Now we are mainly focusing on housing, but in the first place we're demining. They wanted to visit their loved ones' graveyards, but they were mined, and that's why we are now doing these all things together.
And smart city projects, smart village projects, there are many of them around the world that are conceptual in nature, but how far are we moving into actual implementation on projects like that, smart cities, smart villages in Azerbaijan?
Yeah, we are not only doing post-conflict recovery, we also turning these areas into modern infrastructure, modern places. We are implementing smart cities, smart village solutions with smart systems, smart digital systems that are all integrated in the iCloud system. It means having clean energy in the houses, private houses, also having smart transportation system, 15-minute city concept here, also having some AI-based agricultural systems here. And the base of the first smart city, smart village was put in 2021. President Ilham Aliyev personally participated in this event, and now we are again after Agali village in Zangilan, we are going to scale up this project in other liberated territories as well. So we are doing here not only reconstruction of homes, villages, but also we are comply them with international standards of housing.
Another consideration, obviously, for that rebuild process is sustainability. Green energy, climate work happening here in Azerbaijan. How credible is the country's sustainability push, do you think?
Yeah, Azerbaijan is championing in green energy projects as well, and in the near future we will also supply to some of EU countries green energy as well, clean energy as well. We have some projects, important projects that's going on, and now we are committed to have also 3 green energy zones. They are Nakhchivan, Karabakh and Eastern Zengezur regions. We have here some important projects conducted mainly in Jabrail. Also in Baku, in Karadagh, we have some solar panel projects together with, we are implementing with Masdar, with Aqua Power, and all this contributes to also our climate action. We successfully hosted COP29 a year and ago here in Baku, Azerbaijan, the same place, Baku Olympic Olympic Stadium hosted this, and we put some 14 initiatives. 3 of them were about green energy to push the countries to get global commitments to have some green energy corridors. Also, Azerbaijan have 4 green energy corridor projects. Also, we have some commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. We get we renewed our NDCs, it's national determined contributions of Azerbaijan. So we will get 30% renewable energy by 2030 and 40% green energy by 2035. And in this area, utmost important to say that Karabakh and Eastern Zengezur regions will be the first net zero emission, carbon emission areas, not only of Azerbaijan but also of the world.
And Parvana, how does all of this fit within this Baku Master Plan 2040? Because we've been hearing quite a bit about that recently. Talk to us about the longer term strategy.
Yeah, Baku Master Plan 2040 is Azerbaijan's visionary thinking about global urban about sustainable urban development. So we have some priorities here. First of all, digital planning, mobility and sustainability. Also, we make this plan is more structured and long-term urban development. 4 priorities. One of them is having accessible, inclusive cities where every people living with equal opportunities, because the real measure of the city of the future will be whether a person, regardless of its physical ability or any kind of social background, age, sensory condition, can live, can fully participate in urban life with safety, with dignity and independence. The second priority is having clean cities. Here we prioritize having smart waste management, having clean air, clean soil, having more public parks, green spaces, bicycles, promote micro mobility. And the third one is preservation of historical heritage. We always prioritize to protect and to develop our architectural monuments, buildings. And this, the last one, last but not least, is having industrial cities in order to having some development, economic development, also having some tourism activities here.
Well, Parvana, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at Germany's deployment of a Patriot air defence system in Turkey. Don't go away.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Germany says it will send a Patriot air defence battery to Turkey in the coming weeks as NATO looks to strengthen its air and missile defences on the southeastern flank. Now, the move comes as Berlin and Ankara signal a growing interest in closer strategic and defence cooperation. Here are the details.
Germany is preparing to send a Patriot air defense battery to Turkey in the weeks ahead, in a move that reflects growing concern over security on NATO's southeastern flank. The German Defense Ministry said Monday that the deployment is part of a NATO plan to strengthen air and missile defense capabilities in the region. Alongside the Patriot battery, the German military will also establish an air and missile defense task force, which will work closely with its Turkish counterparts, according to the ministry. The announcement comes at a time when European security calculations are being reshaped by ongoing conflicts in both Ukraine and the Middle East. And it also coincides with a broader political message from Berlin. Speaking alongside Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul said Germany wants to expand strategic ties between Turkey and the European Union. Addressing reporters Monday, he said Turkey has the potential to exert significant influence on regional trouble spots, pointing to Ankara's mediating role in crises affecting Europe's security. Wadephul also voiced Berlin's support for greater Turkish participation in the development of European defense and industrial policies. For Ankara, this represents an important signal. Turkey has long argued that its military capabilities, strategic geography, and role within NATO make it essential to European security planning. And in practical terms, the planned Patriot deployment serves to bolster that argument. Warsaw, meanwhile, has voiced similar support for Turkey's expanding role. On Monday, Polish Deputy Foreign Minister Marcin Bosacki described Turkey as a key strategic partner for Poland, citing a landmark security cooperation agreement that the two countries signed last year. Taken together, all these developments suggest that Turkey is well on its way to becoming a key component of Europe's wider defense and security architecture. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Well, joining me now also in Istanbul, Turkey, is Ambassador Matthew Bryza, former White House and senior State Department official, to discuss the German defence mission and what it signals for the alliance's security. Ambassador, very good indeed to have you with us. Thank you for joining us on Primetime. Germany rotating into this Patriot deployment then in Turkey, replacing a US contribution. What does that say about burden sharing inside the alliance?
Yeah, thanks for having me with you. And that's a great question. It's one actually that Defense Minister of Germany, Pistorius, addressed openly. He said, this is an example of Germany increasing its burden sharing with the United States. And, burden sharing has been an issue between the U.S. and its European allies for the past, 5 decades, 6 decades even. And under President Trump, of course, that has become a top shelf issue because he has put so much pressure on the European and Canadian allies of the United States in NATO to do just that, to pay more for their defense and to take on more responsibility. And the fact that Germany is doing this, given its history, given how, because of that history of World War II, how underinvested Germany had been in recent years in its military and how its capabilities had lapsed, this is a big moment for Germany as well.
So in the one sense, it's still a routine rotation, isn't it? But also, as you say, it does carry this sort of political weight too, doesn't it?
It sure does. Yeah. So there's no change in capability here based on this rotation. I mean, right after the United States attacked Iran on February 28th, the United States sent this rotational unit in. So it brought its missiles, it brought its personnel. They came out in a real hurry. It was a rush because the war was a surprise. It was a surprise attack, basically. And so I think the U.S. crew is tired. It needs to refit its missiles and communication systems, and so they're going to pack up and go home and rest up and repair. And that same capability now will be provided by the German unit, 150 soldiers with their missiles and communication systems. And NATO is so wonderfully interoperable that it's a sort of a plug-in capability. I mean, they literally will plug in their radar systems and everything else with what the U.S. was using alongside the Turkish NATO ally.
And Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, of course, has just held talks in Berlin, including with the German Chancellor. How important is that diplomatic timing in shaping this deployment?
Well, I think probably Germany and Turkey had been planning that meeting between Hakan Fidan and German Foreign Minister Wattepel for quite some time. In fact, the official reason why they're meeting is to hold, I think it's the third session of the Germany-Turkey strategic dialogue. But that sounds boring, except that the previous one was held way back in 2012. So that shows there had been a deterioration in the security relationship and diplomatic relationship between Germany and Turkey. I know that from my own experience for the past couple of years, Germany has wanted to help the rest of the European Union and NATO appreciate what Turkey has to offer in terms of its defense industries and the size and capabilities of Turkey's own military, the second largest army in NATO. And so Germany was taking a lead in helping Turkey get access to the Eurofighter fighter jet. And also, as we know, for years, for decades, Turkey has wanted more air defense along its southern border. The United States and Turkey could not reach an agreement whereby the U.S. would sell Patriot air defense missiles to Turkey, and that prompted Turkey to turn to Russian S-400s, as we know, and then a huge dispute with the United States. So now there's a broad diplomatic and security process that is building out of that bilateral strategic working group that I talked about. And so adding the rotation or timing the rotation of the German Patriot unit into the country to coincide with these meetings in Berlin is no accident at all. In fact, that is one of the goals, I think, of that meeting is precisely to smooth this diplomatic transition in the persons of the 150 German soldiers that will now be manning their own Patriot battery in Turkey.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's long been an encouragement by Germany to other partners to get more interested, get more involved in what Turkey has to offer. German forces and the Patriot system set to remain in Turkey. What does that suggest about NATO's longer-term security planning in this region, do you think?
It's too early to tell because the only reason that Patriot unit was deployed to Turkey was because of this U.S. attack on Iran. And so will that unit stay? Beyond September is when the German unit is supposed to stay. So will that capability remain after September? Depends, I think, to a certain extent on whether the U.S.-Israel war against Iran is continuing. But it's possible, as you suggest, that maybe the NATO has sort of awakened and realized that, wow, that southern Turkish border is going to be extremely sensitive and under a wide range of threats from the air for quite some time. So we don't know yet. It's pretty clear NATO has not made a doctrinal decision or a strategic decision to keep a Patriot battery on Turkey's southern border, but I think personally it's absolutely justified and needed.
And is this a sign, Ambassador, of a new Germany, a new, more muscular Germany within NATO that we can get used to for some time to come, do you think?
I definitely think so. It's as I mentioned, the historical challenges that Germany faced. I mean, politically, it was anathema for Germans to speak about or think about militarization, right, because of the two world wars, et cetera. That has changed dramatically, especially under Defense Minister Pistorius, who now is this second chancellor that he's served. So we see a massive buildup in German military and defense technologies, and Rheinmetall is one of the world's leaders, of course. But also Germany is procuring a wide range of other weapon systems. And in conversations I have with other members of NATO, military and diplomatic leadership, they're urging Germany to take on a stronger role as Europe reels from the Trump administration's pulling back of U.S. capabilities from Europe. And in fact, it only makes sense that Europe's largest economy, which is a democracy in which there is no genuine militarization, should play such a more robust role in providing for the defense of NATO. I mean, you look beyond Germany's borders, you've got Poland and the Baltic states, and then Russia, the primary security threat to Europe. So Germany is crucial for the security of NATO by deterring any Russian attacks.
Ambassador, always great to get your analysis. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Okay, after the break, we'll head to Brussels, where NATO military chiefs are meeting to discuss the alliance's security priorities. Don't go away. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabon. One important note to Fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv, Washington, London, Moscow, Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, Port Emu.
Welcome back to Primetime. Good to have you with us this evening. NATO's military committee brought together defence chiefs from all 32 allies in Brussels on Tuesday for high-level talks on the alliance's security priorities. Well, the meeting focused on strengthening NATO's deterrence and defence posture, as well as preparations for the NATO summit in Ankara in July. A senior NATO commander said European allies and Canada are taking on greater responsibility for conventional defence in Europe, while still relying on critical US capabilities. Well, the commander also confirmed that a total of 5,000 US troops will be withdrawn from Europe. The meeting concluded with a joint press conference where officials outlined the main outcomes.
The question we have ahead of us is the...
As we discussed with the Chief of Defence, we must note that the rate of delivery and fielding of all capabilities necessary for our deterrence and defence require a dramatic increases and improvement. We are not at war, but we are not at peace either. This is why we must redouble our efforts to focus defence investment in accordance with our pledges. In parallel, I call firmly on the defence industry to accelerate production and adapt business model to this imperative. Enough with fragmentation, which could be the main risk when more funds are available. We must sustain this commitment in the long term with the steadiness and consistency not to be thrown off course by social media or other distractions. This morning, we also reaffirm our continued support to Ukraine and strengthening its armed forces. We are building on our already strong partnership. For example, we recently undertook joint visit to Ukraine and another to the Western Balkans. By aligning complementary efforts, reinforcing one another, together, we can deliver so much more.
Well, we're now joined in Brussels by political analyst Nuno Wanon-Martins to discuss the NATO military chiefs meeting and its wider significance. Nuno, great to see you as always. Thank you very much for joining us on Primetime. So the NATO military chiefs then, as we saw, are meeting in Brussels, but it's against this backdrop, isn't it, of multiple international conflicts. How stretched do you think the alliance's attention is right now?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. Always a pleasure. Well, I think the first thing is the challenge in Europe, and we have seen, especially in Latvia, also in Finland, and in the past in Romania, the case of drones falling in those countries. And we have seen also that the US has deployed some military from Germany. It has refused to deploy other military to Poland. So there is a real concern about the actual and current capabilities of the member states of NATO in Europe, and how they see the threat coming from Russia. And I do believe this is the main concern right now, especially after the announcement by President Putin that they have just built a new missile which is capable of at least go into Lisbon in around 10 minutes. So all of this, I think it's the major concern. And this doesn't mean that other concerns such as the broader conflicts in the world, especially the war in Iran, is basically also under discussion today at the NATO meeting.
Yeah, does that mean then, Nuno, that there's a mismatch here? Because the chair of the NATO military committee talked about vigilance across all fronts, didn't he? But is NATO genuinely equipped at this moment to deal with these crises simultaneously?
Well, the question is, this is a very long and a very old discussion, and this is one of the reasons why the 5% budget that was at least trying to be imposed by the Trump administration to the other NATO members was under discussion, because the question is how capable, especially European states, members of NATO, can do to support themselves and to support their own defense. There is a growing concern in the Baltic states. As I said before, there is also growing concern in Poland. And this means that nobody's going to discuss, but it will be interesting to see, first and foremost, what are the real capabilities on one hand. On the second hand, to push, as already the European Union is being doing in the past, within its member states, to push as much as possible to a quicker and faster response to get better defense capabilities by European member states especially.
And with the war in Ukraine now in its 5th year, how much has that reshaped NATO's military planning and their long-term posture?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, the war in Ukraine, clearly, I mean, that's been going on now. It's into its 5th year. How much has that shaped NATO policy and NATO's long-term positioning and posture?
Well, it shaped a lot because since 2022 that it showed Europe and it showed NATO members that Russia is capable of invading, contrary to all the odds and contrary to all the promises that were made in the past, despite the fact that Russia has, since 2014, invaded some parts of Ukraine already, and even before that with the Georgia conflict. But the question is, more than to see that, is really the capability, and to see how not only NATO could support Ukraine on one hand, not growing into effective war against Russia, but also to see up to what the NATO is capable of supporting Ukraine. And it was clear that who could support Ukraine was basically the United States of America. And this also is I think that other member states are trying to move on into a different reality on one hand, and to move on to be a bigger, let's say, partner with Ukraine, especially on a new type of warfare that we are being living since 2022, and especially since the developing of drones by the Ukrainian forces, which creates a different type of, as I said, of warfare on one hand, and on the other hand, Ukraine, as a paradox, became an example for other member states in Europe who are NATO member states, who can be also developing its own industry thanks to the Ukrainians.
Now, Mark Rutte has a difficult balancing act on multiple fronts, doesn't he? There are growing concerns about wider instability, particularly linked to the situation in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. How much pressure is the NATO leadership under at the moment to make the right judgments, make the right calls, make the right statements when they're surrounded by so much geopolitical instability?
I think more than geopolitical instability is about creating a certain message, a certain narrative within the union, the NATO union itself, especially with the disruption that somehow the Trump administration has created, and the reinforcing narrative that the Trump administration has given to the other NATO members. We cannot forget that President Trump said the European states didn't help with the Strait of Hormuz closing. And this also becomes somehow, it's a reality that NATO depends very much on the US capabilities, no matter how we say that it's in the interest of the United States of America to be the head of NATO and the head of its capabilities. It's also a reality that because of this specific reality, the European member states didn't develop its own capabilities. And this creates a problem for the Secretary General on one hand, especially when the Secretary General in this specific case has a different view than the previous one, who could be seen more, let's say, on the left wing. So the question is this: this is the balance that Mark Rutte has to build on one hand, but on the other hand, it really has to convince the European members of NATO to develop their own capabilities. And how he does this, I do believe that the best way to do this is to continue its talks behind the scenes and try to be as less as possible giving some ideas outside in front in order not to create certain, let's say, tension between the member states and the Secretary General.
And where do you think the Secretary General's mind is when it comes to NATO expansion? What is he thinking? What is the strategy likely to be? Is now the right time to consider that?
I do believe that I have been thinking about that. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting question, because it is true that on one hand, expansion is always necessary for certain type of alliances. But on the other hand, we have to decide as an alliance, why are we expanding? Are we going to expand to a country that doesn't have the capability to support itself on one hand, or even to allow and to give others to develop themselves? Because this will create a potential problem if this country is attacked under Article 5 of NATO. But on the other hand, if the country is capable and the country is developing, why not? The question is, the narrative is, and it's also the will, not only of the Secretary General, but the members of NATO, if they really want to expand on one hand, which countries they are going to expand. And in my view, now, I don't think that you should expand or not because of other countries who are a threat to your alliance believe, but some countries within the alliance might think that they don't want to expand because this could be a threat to the enemy, which is in the case of Ukraine and Russia. And in my view, it's about the member states to leverage, to analyze, to balance, if it is the right moment, if it is the right thing to do right now to expand and to which countries to expand, not to others to say if NATO should expand or not.
Nuno, great to get your analysis as always. Thank you very much for joining us on Primetime.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, after the break, we'll bring you the latest on the US-Iran crisis as diplomatic efforts continue to prevent further escalation. Don't go away.
Moi, Luis Moreno Campo, déclare solennellement.
We've seen remarkable developments between Baku and Yerevan.
We are against all this kind of peace.
Russia does not want Pashinyan to win. Russia wants perpetual conflict.
A region that's in conflict or in tension is better for their ability to play a role.
Russian oligarchs are less about money and more about political influence. Russia can make its own interventions through online postings.
Que j'ai rempli de mes devoirs et exercerai mes attributions de procureur de la Cour pénale internationale.
Money in politics everywhere is corrupting influence, but when it becomes weaponized by a foreign power.
The main thing we have money. Too much resources, too much money.
The main topic is to change Pashinyan.
They have both on Big Boss. Big Boss which is in Russia.
L'impartialité et en toute conscience.
We are for pressuring Pashinyan. We are organizing rallies on the streets.
Et que je répéterai le caractère confidentiel de ces enquêtes.
They are election time. No. And election time is everything is binary.
Que remuevan a Pashinyan.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. US President Donald Trump has postponed a planned military strike on Iran, allowing more time for ongoing peace talks. Well, negotiators are working against the clock as Pakistan passes a revised conflict resolution proposal from Tehran to Washington.
President Donald Trump says the United States is holding off on a possible military strike against Iran, saying Gulf nations urged Washington to give diplomacy more time as serious negotiations continue with Tehran. Trump stressed that the US would not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon, but indicated he hopes a diplomatic solution can prevent a wider regional conflict.
We're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. So I was called by these three countries plus others, and they're dealing directly with our people and right now Iran. And there seems to be a very good chance that they can work something out. If we can do that without bombing the hell out of them, I'd be very happy, please.
The comments come as indirect talks between Washington and Tehran appear to be making progress, despite ongoing mistrust and continued tensions across the Middle East. Iranian officials say they are reviewing US feedback and have already sent a revised 14-point proposal to Pakistani mediators. The new draft focuses on trust-building measures to end the war that began with US and Israeli attacks in February. Despite a ceasefire reached in April, tensions remain high. Iran's foreign ministry says it approaches the talks with deep skepticism, citing Washington's track record. Tehran also dismissed repeated US threats that military action could resume if negotiations fail. Disagreements also persist over a key economic issue. Iranian state media claims Washington agreed to waive sanctions on Iranian oil during the talks, but a US official flatly denied that claim, calling it false. Meanwhile, global energy markets are on edge. Oil prices are climbing over fears of prolonged supply disruptions, particularly through the vital Strait of Hormuz.
Meanwhile, Tehran says it has forwarded its revised counter-proposal to the US draft, setting out Iran's conditions for a peace agreement with Washington, including an end to the maritime blockade and the lifting of sanctions. Touraj Shirilila reports now from Iran.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi has announced the major points of Tehran's latest version of conditions to reach a peace deal with the United States. According to a spokesman of the Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, Ebrahim Rezai, the senior diplomat declared Iran's terms in a meeting with the committee's members on Monday. The MP quoted Gharibabadi as saying Iran has demanded that war must end on all fronts, including in Lebanon. US forces withdraw from the region surrounding Iran. The maritime blockade be lifted, nuclear sanctions be removed, and Iran's assets, frozen since 1979 Islamic Revolution, be released. Also on Monday, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baqai said that Iran has sent its new 14-point counter-proposal to the US via Pakistani mediators. Without elaborating on the details of Iran's draft, the spokesman said Tehran received Washington's response to its previous proposal last week, despite US statement of dismissing Iran's conditions. He stated that Iran's nuclear program is not on the agenda of negotiations, stressing that war damage compensation is an issue which Tehran has been seriously demanding. Meantime, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with Pakistani Interior Minister Mohsen Raza Naqvi, during which they discussed bilateral ties as well as Pakistan's mediation between Iran and the United States. According to official sources, he told the visiting Pakistani official that while Iran is serious about diplomacy, it will not miss any opportunity to enhance its defense readiness. His position was reiterated by President Masoud Pezeshkian, who stated at a conference in Tehran that Iran would not yield to pressure from any foreign power, reaffirming his administration's commitment to engaging in dialogue with dignity. Touraj Shirilila from Tehran for A News.
Well, we're joined now by Colonel Nuno Pereira da Silva in Lisbon, Portugal, to unpack the latest on the US-Iran situation as diplomatic efforts continue. Colonel, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good to have you with us on Primetime. So President Trump then holding off a military strike for now, but is this a genuine turning point, do you think, or just a sort of pause before inevitable escalation?
With Trump, we never know. It's always a surprise. Generally, he talks one thing in the morning, and in the afternoon it could be another thing. But I suppose that he don't want to enter in a conflict again, because the problems that he has in the United States of America, because the problems of his popularity, that he is not very well now in the country. So, and he don't want to begin a war again, and he's trying to have a better agreement than it was the agreement of Obama. And what he's losing the war. So the problem now is that Iran is winning the war with the state of Hormuz is winning the war. This is, and the problem is Trump don't know how he can keep off Iran. The problem is delaying, but he don't want to enter. All the Arab countries don't want that Trump will go to the war again. It's a problem, because if the war begins again, they will be attacked again, and they don't want. So everybody is trying to say to Mr. Trump, it's better to don't enter. And Trump went to China this week, and he didn't have the support that he hoped to have from Xi. It was very bad. It was a very bad meeting, and it was not very well to the American, because she said that Iran has the right to enrich the uranium, and he said that Iran is a sovereign country.
It's very
so. It was the problem is this: nobody wants this war.
No, Colonel, and it's interesting as well. If you look at Pakistan's role, just give us your evaluation of the mediation that Pakistan has been doing. Do you think, has it been increasingly effective, and what sense do you have about who actually really has influence now over this process?
Now, I think Pakistan was doing the best thing they can. But it's very difficult to have a diplomatic meetings with Trump always on the social net saying rubbish, because it's not useful to a diplomatic meetings to have always the president saying things in this social media, always pressing. This is against diplomacy. And what I'm saying, he's doing the best thing they can. He's trying to have meetings with experts, because they didn't finish until now. But also we have now the Oman also to trying to help in this to end this war. Because the big problem now is the Gulf states, because they are very, very near to the Iran, and they don't want to have more attacks. So everybody would like to stop the war, and Trump also don't want to go to the war. Also, only if it will be obliged, because he wants that Iran don't have nuclear weapon.
Yes.
So I think we are closing. My opinion is that we are closing. That Iran is not losing the war. The problem, it is Trump thinks the Iran has lost the war, and he's treating Iran like they lost the war. It is not true, because Iran maybe it's winning the war, not the war militarily, but the war in terms of economy and all the asymmetric war is winning.
Yes.
So this is the problem.
It's very interesting as well. And sorry to interrupt, Colonel, but if we go back to the plan as well, these iterations of these proposals, Iran has reportedly put forward a detailed 14-point proposal now through mediators. What is happening here? Is this, are we actually getting closer to a deal with each iteration, or is this just entrenched positions being stated and restated at each other?
I think because Iran now is in this new position of strength, and of course Trump don't want, but all the negotiations is like that. When I was in the European Union, I was developing the military capabilities within the European Union. It was always the same thing within allies. So everybody has very strong points in order to have a medium that satisfies all the parts. But now here in Iran, nobody wants to go to a medium to have a common ground. Nobody wants to do it, and Iran, because Iran thinks he's winning the war, he's pressing more, and Trump is pressing also. So they don't want to understand them. That's why I think Pakistan and Oman must try to have the common ground for all. But with Trump, we never know. It can say when he's a chaotic. He's trying to put the world in a chaotic manner, and we don't understand why. And I think you don't understand also. The only thing he wants, it's an agreement better than Obama. So we must have mediators, must have that common ground, and trying to do something. It will be a little bit better, and Iran can say yes. So, but it's only the only thing that he wants now, because he cannot lose the war. He cannot lose the war, but he is losing the war.
Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of these areas where there is disparity, as you say. We've got major gaps still on sanctions, on the nuclear program, also gaps on the broader economic conditions. Are any of these gaps actually bridgeable, do you think?
It's very difficult. That gaps are very difficult, but I think I would like that it would be possible. I would like that, but I don't know. Really, I don't know. But the problem is that when we make a strategic error or a strategic mistake, like the United States of America did, we must. They are paying the strategic mistake that they did, but now they must have a point to escape, and the point Trump must escape and must say to their people in America that they won the war, and it is very difficult. But if we are going to escalate, if Trump is going to do another attack, it will be a mistake again, because if we are doing the same for the same problem, we answer twice for the same time, twice. It will not be a solution, because when we do that, if the solution was not reached once, it will not be reached in the second. Indeed. So they could go to a war again, but the result, it will be the same.
Colonel,
so it's better don't go.
Colonel, we appreciate your time and your analysis very much indeed. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. See you next time.
Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us.
Moi, Luis Moreno Campo, déclare solennellement.
We've seen remarkable developments between Baku and Yerevan.
We are against all of this kind of peace.
Russia does not want Pashinyan to win. Russia wants perpetual conflict.
Region that's in conflict or in tension is better for their ability to play a role.
Russian oligarchs are less about money and more about political influence. Russia can make its own interventions through online postings.
Que je remplirai mes devoirs et exercerai mes attributions de procureur de la Cour pénale internationale.
Money in politics everywhere is corrupting influence, but when it becomes weaponized by a foreign power.
The main thing we have money. Too much resources, too much money.
The main topic is to change Pashinyan.
They have boss and big boss. Big boss which is in Russia.
L'impartialité et en toute conscience.
We are for pressuring Pashinyan. We are organizing rallies on the streets.
Et que je répéterai le caractère confidentiel de ces enquêtes.
They are election time. No, and election time is everything binary.
Que remuevan a Pashinyan.
Welcome back to Primetime. Now to Europe, and the cruise ship at the centre of a deadly hantavirus outbreak has docked in Rotterdam. Here's our correspondent with more details.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where the cruise ship at the center of the deadly hantavirus outbreak has docked in Rotterdam, triggering the final phase of a complex international containment operation. The MV Hondius arrived in the Dutch port Monday after becoming the focus of a multi-country health response triggered by an outbreak of the rare Andes strain of hantavirus, a virus usually linked to rodent exposure, but one of the few known strains capable of limited human-to-human transmission. 3 passengers, a Dutch couple, and a German national have died. 10 cases have been identified in total, including 8 confirmed and 2 probable infections. Dutch health officials say 25 crew members and 2 onboard medical staff disembarked under controlled conditions, with no one showing symptoms. The 2 Dutch crew members, a doctor and a nurse, are isolating at home, while the remaining crew, mostly from the Philippines, will quarantine in mobile units set up in Rotterdam. The ship itself will now undergo a week-long disinfection, with cabins linked to infected passengers receiving special treatment. Health authorities stress this is not a broader public health threat. Unlike highly transmissible respiratory viruses, hantavirus requires close and prolonged contact for person-to-person spread. Charling Leinstra, the head of the Dutch Coordination Center for Communicable Disease Control at RIVM, said, quote, "There's no risk for Rotterdam and that all those exposed are under monitoring and quarantine." Still, officials are not declaring the crisis over just yet. With an incubation period of up to 6 weeks, health agencies across several countries continue monitoring former passengers already dispersed around the world. Dutch Harbour Master René de Vries said, quote, "We didn't see this coming, that a ship that ran into trouble in Antarctica would dock here in the Netherlands. 10 days ago, we weren't ready for that, but we set up an entire quarantine village in just a few days." For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Central Asia's expanding trade links with China are creating new opportunities, but also new security risks. In Astana, Kazakhstan, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has met regional security chiefs to discuss how cybercrime, smuggling and trafficking are increasingly moving along the same routes as legitimate trade. Fariza Kalamazina has the details.
Growing trade between Central Asia and China is bringing new security concerns to the region. From cybercrime to smuggling and drug trafficking, governments are facing risks that increasingly move across borders. Those challenges were at the center of talks in Astana, where Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev met with interior ministers and public security chiefs from Central Asian countries and China. Speaking at the meeting, Tokayev said stronger economic ties and major infrastructure projects will require closer security coordination. He pointed to the Trans-Caspian international transport route, which is becoming increasingly important as global trade routes shift, but also creates new risks linked to smuggling and the illegal movement of drugs and weapons. Cybercrime was another major focus. According to the Kazakh president, criminal networks are becoming more technology-driven, while cybercrime has evolved into a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Central Asia's position along major transport corridors makes the region increasingly exposed to such risks. Artificial intelligence was also part of the discussions, with concerns over how the technology could be used by destructive groups. Tokayev called for closer coordination between regional law enforcement agencies, including stronger information sharing and integrated databases. The cooperation format dates back to 2024, when the first meeting of interior ministers from Central Asia and China was held in the Chinese city of Lanyungang. Since then, countries have expanded joint training programs and professional exchange, particularly in cybercrime prevention. Fariza Kalimurzaeva, Almaty, A News.
China's grip on rare earths could be tightening further. Well, a new discovery in the country's northeast is being presented as a boost to Beijing's long-term resource security at a time when critical minerals are becoming central to electric vehicles, defence systems and the global technology race. Manor Makdoum reports now from Beijing.
China has announced a major new rare earth discovery in its icy northeastern region, a development that could further cement the country's dominance over global rare earth supplies and processing. Chinese media reported that the newly identified deposit contains significant reserves of strategic minerals used in electric vehicles, semiconductors, defense systems, and advanced manufacturing technologies. The discovery was made in northeast China, an area known for its harsh winters and rich mineral resources. Officials and experts said that the find could strengthen Beijing's long-term resource security at a time of intensifying technological competition with the United States as well as the Western economies. China already controls the majority of the world's rare earth refining and processing capacity. The announcement comes as countries worldwide are racing to secure stable supply chains for critical minerals essential to the green energy transition and high-tech industries. Analysts say that the new discovery could reinforce China's leverage in the global rare earth market and deepen its strategic advantage in key industrial sectors. Manor Makdoum, A-News, Beijing.
After the break, we'll take a look at the top stories of the day. Do not go away.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A-News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A-News.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue to escalate, with both sides reporting fresh strikes on critical infrastructure and industrial sites. Meanwhile, concerns are growing over the security of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant as Moscow and Kyiv trade accusations amid stalled peace efforts.
Ukrainian authorities said a Russian drone strike damaged vehicles at an enterprise in the northern city of Chernihiv on Monday. Officials said a fuel truck and another vehicle were heavily damaged in the attack. Firefighters carried out cooling operations at the scene following the strike, while no casualties were immediately reported. Meanwhile, Russia said it carried out a massive retaliatory strike on Monday, targeting enterprises linked to Ukraine's military-industrial complex, energy infrastructure facilities, and military port infrastructure. In a statement, the Russian Defense Ministry said the strikes were conducted in response to Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galutzin told reporters in Moscow that there were no signals from Kyiv regarding the next round of peace negotiations, adding that Moscow remains in constant contact with Washington on the issue. In a separate statement on Telegram, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine's strikes on Russian energy infrastructure were having a significant impact, claiming many companies had been forced to reduce oil production and shut down dozens of oil wells.
In just recent months, Russia's oil refining has dropped by 10%. It is also important to note that Russian oil companies are being forced to shut down their oil wells. This is even more significant. Given the nature of Russian oil production, this is what hurts them most, apart, of course, from losing money.
Meanwhile, the head of Russia's state nuclear corporation, Rosatom, warned that the situation around the Russian-held Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine was approaching the point of no return, due to increased Ukrainian attacks in the area. The Russian-installed management at the plant, Europe's largest nuclear facility with 6 reactors, said Ukrainian forces had attacked the site for the 3rd consecutive day.
Authorities in California are investigating a deadly shooting at a mosque in San Diego as a possible hate crime after 3 people were killed and 2 teenage suspects were later found dead from self-inflicted injuries.
Police say 2 teenage gunmen opened fire outside the Islamic Center of San Diego shortly before noon on Monday, killing 3 men, including a security guard. San Diego Police Chief Scott Wall said officers later found the 2 suspects, aged 17 and 19, dead inside a vehicle from apparent self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Authorities say all children attending a school inside the mosque complex were safely accounted for. The FBI has joined the investigation, which police are treating as a possible hate crime. Investigators are still trying to determine what led to the attack and whether another nearby shooting incident may be connected. Residents gathered outside the mosque following the shooting, expressing grief and concern over rising anti-Muslim hostility.
It's just sad that someone died today. It's very sad, especially in the mosque. They didn't do anything at all and they do not deserve that. And I just feel so bad, and it's actually very I don't feel good at all about it.
I think that they went in there when they knew Muslims would be in there. They went in there looking for people gathering there for religious reasons. And I don't think that the mayor, Todd Gloria, is doing enough to condemn the hatred towards Muslims.
And it's a terrible situation. I've been given some early updates, but we're going to be going back and looking at it very strongly. Yeah, please.
Police said the security guard who was killed may have helped prevent even greater loss of life during the attack.
A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon is under growing strain as Beirut says the death toll from Israeli strikes has now passed 3,000. Well, fresh attacks across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley are raising fears the conflict could spiral once again, despite international efforts to uphold the ceasefire.
Lebanon's health ministry says more than 3,000 people have now been killed since fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalated in early March. Officials claim that at least 7 people were killed on Monday alone in strikes carried out across the country, despite a US-backed ceasefire extension announced just days earlier. Among those killed was a senior figure in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement after an Israeli airstrike targeted an apartment building in the town of Doris in eastern Lebanon's Baalbek district. The conflict intensified after Hezbollah launched rockets into Israel following an Israeli strike that reportedly killed Iran's supreme leader. Since then, near-daily exchanges of fire and airstrikes have continued to deepen regional tensions. Lebanon and Israel agreed on Friday to extend their ceasefire by 45 days, with negotiations expected to resume in early June. But Lebanese officials say the violence has continued, with more than 400 people reportedly killed since the ceasefire first took effect on April 17th. The US brokered agreement allows Israel to carry out strikes targeting what it describes as Hezbollah military activity. Lebanon, however, says the ongoing attacks are undermining efforts to restore state control over weapons held by armed groups. Israeli strikes have continued to hit towns and villages across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley, leaving dozens dead in recent days and casting fresh doubt over whether the ceasefire can hold. Regional and international mediators are continuing efforts to prevent the conflict from escalating further, as both sides prepare for another round of negotiations next month.
A large Gaza-bound aid flotilla has been intercepted by Israeli forces in international waters. According to organisers, the operation has sparked strong reactions from activists and governments amid renewed debate over the naval blockade on Gaza.
Israeli forces have intercepted a Gaza-bound aid flotilla carrying dozens of vessels in international waters, according to organisers. The global Sumud flotilla said more than 50 boats were stopped around 250 nautical miles from Gaza as they attempted to deliver humanitarian aid and challenge Israel's maritime blockade. Activists said military personnel boarded several vessels during the operation.
We are claiming that this is a kidnapping happening in international water. This is an illegal act of piracy, and this is one more reason to make sure that the governments and the citizens of the world condemn Israel and cut off ties with this apartheid regime.
Ships from the global Sumud flotilla had set sail for a third time on Thursday from southern Turkey after earlier attempts to deliver aid to Gaza were also intercepted by Israel in international waters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the operation, saying it was aimed at preventing support for armed groups in Gaza.
Well, please convey my congratulations to all the soldiers in the force. I think you are doing an outstanding job, both with the first flotilla and with this part, and actually effectively nullifying, cancelling a malicious plan designed to break the isolation we have imposed on Hamas terrorists in Gaza.
Turkey strongly criticised the operation, with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan calling for international action and the safe return of Turkish citizens involved in the mission.
I curse in the strongest terms this act of piracy and banditry against the passengers of Hope on the Sumud flotilla, comprised of citizens of 40 different countries.
Israel says it will continue enforcing its naval blockade on Gaza, arguing it is necessary for security reasons and to prevent weapons from reaching Hamas. The incident adds to rising international tensions over humanitarian access to Gaza and the legality of the blockade as diplomatic pressure continues to mount.
Cuba has issued a sharp warning to Washington after a report claimed Havana had acquired military drones and discussed possible attacks on US targets. Cuba's foreign minister vehemently denied such claims.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel says any US military action against Cuba would lead to a bloodbath with incalculable consequences for regional peace and stability. His comments came after an Axios report, citing classified intelligence, said classified intelligence suggested Cuba had acquired more than 300 military drones and discussed plans to target the US naval base at Guantanamo Bay, US military vessels, and Key West, Florida. In a post on X, Díaz-Canel said Cuba poses no threat to any country, including the United States, but has what he called an absolute and legitimate right to defend itself against a military attack. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez also said Cuba has the right to self-defense under the UN Charter and international law, accusing those seeking to attack Cuba of using false pretexts. On the streets of Havana, residents echoed the government's defiant tone.
I know for a fact that Cuba is a strong country. We Cubans are very brave, and we're not going to back down. If they come, they'll have to fight, because Cuba will fight back. That's what I can tell you. My country, whether we're hungry or not, no matter what, will fight back. They'd better not come because there's going to be a fight.
There must be an agreement between the two sides to talk and negotiate whatever they want. And Cuba must also enforce its laws, do you understand? But they shouldn't invade Cuba. Cuba will defend itself at all times, but it will never hand over the country. It will never hand it over.
The warning comes as Cuba faces worsening economic pressure after the United States cut off its energy supplies earlier this year, leaving the island with severe fuel shortages and limited electricity.
Azerbaijan and Georgia are tightening the links that connect the South Caucasus. In Baku, President Ilham Aliyev and Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze focused on energy, transport and regional connectivity, with new agreements covering gas, electricity, rail and oil infrastructure.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met with Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze in Baku on Monday, with both sides focusing on expanding cooperation in energy, transport and regional connectivity. The visit took place as part of Kobakidze's trip to Azerbaijan to attend the 13th session of the UN World Urban Forum. Both leaders stressed the importance of strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries. President Aliyev said his recent visit to Georgia helped strengthen bilateral ties, while both sides stressed the importance of expanding cooperation in energy, transport and regional connectivity. A series of agreements were signed during the visit, covering the supply of natural gas and electricity to Georgia, as well as electricity transit through Georgian territory to Turkey. The documents also included the protocol confirming the completion of modernization works on the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway project. In addition, an operational agreement was signed between the State Oil Company of Azerbaijan, SOCAR Midstream Operations, and the Georgian Oil and Gas Corporation. It defines the operating terms for the Georgian section of the Western Route export pipeline, including the Supsa oil terminal and related infrastructure. The sides also agreed to resume daily passenger train services on the Baku-Tbilisi-Baku route, starting from May 26th. Officials said the meeting further reinforced strategic cooperation and highlighted efforts to strengthen regional energy and transport links.
Health officials are racing to contain a fast-moving Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. Well, the World Health Organization has declared a public health emergency, warning that the rare Bundibugyo strain spread for weeks before it was detected.
A fast-moving Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda has been declared a public health emergency by the World Health Organization. The death toll has risen sharply, with hundreds of suspected cases now linked to the outbreak. Infections have been reported in urban areas of Eastern DRC, while neighbouring Uganda has also confirmed cases.
Early on Sunday, I declared a public health emergency of international concern over an epidemic of Ebola disease in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda. This is the first time a Director General has declared a FIC before convening an emergency committee. I did not do this lightly. I did it in accordance with Article 12 of the International Health Regulations, after consulting the ministers of health of both countries, and because I'm deeply concerned about the scale and speed of the epidemic.
The outbreak is centred in Ituri province, where conflict, weak health services and delayed detection have complicated the response. Congolese health officials say early tests failed to detect the virus because they were looking for the more common Zaire strain, while the current outbreak is caused by Bundibugyo.
You see, this outbreak was detected very late, even too late. Why? Because when the first cases appeared, they took samples and sent them to laboratories, for example, the Bunia laboratory. But in these laboratories, they used the techniques we had used for the 2018 outbreak. They used specific cartridges for Ebola Zaire, and these Ebola Zaire cartridges did not recognize Ebola Bundibugyo.
Officials also linked part of the early spread to funeral practices before communities were aware Ebola was involved. The Bundibugyo strain has no approved vaccine or virus-specific treatment, though WHO says public health measures remain central to slowing transmission.
WHO has a team on the ground supporting national authorities to respond. We have deployed people, supplies, equipment, and funds. I have approved an additional $3.4 million from the contingency fund for emergencies, bringing the total to $3.9 million.
WHO says surveillance, contact tracing, safe burials, and protective equipment are now central to the response. Uganda has postponed its annual Martyrs' Day celebrations because of the risk of further spread. Some border crossings have seen tighter controls, but WHO has urged countries not to close borders, warning that unmonitored movement could make the outbreak harder to contain.
And finally tonight, a fertiliser shortage linked to the Hormuz crisis is adding pressure on Australian wheat farmers, with some now reducing crops as costs rise and dry conditions threaten production.
Australia's wheat belt is heading into a difficult season, with dry weather and rising input costs forcing growers to scale back planting. The pressure comes as disruption around the Strait of Hormuz has affected fertiliser supplies from the Middle East, a key source for Australia's farming sector. In Brocklesby, farmer Justin Everett is cutting his wheat area by half after sharp increases in fuel and fertiliser costs.
Yeah, with the triple whammy of weather, fuel and fertiliser, I think we're likely to see a drop in production right across Australia. I think everyone will be trying to save their money and put it into, just make sure that they can get through to the other end and get to next year and go again. That's the most important bit, is making sure you're right to go next year.
The concern is not limited to one farm. Australia is the world's third largest wheat exporter, and the smaller harvest could tighten global supply and add pressure to prices. Analysts say the country may have up to 10 million tonnes less wheat to ship in the coming season, equal to about 5% of annual global exports. For Everett, the response is already visible across his fields. Some land will be left without crops this season, as he looks for ways to limit costs and protect income.
Yep, we've pulled back on our total planting. We're going to let some paddocks just go through with no crop in them. I'll put livestock on those paddocks, and we're going to have a bit more of a livestock focus throughout the year. I think there's potential for more income from the livestock going forward.
Fertiliser remains one of the biggest risks. Australia usually imports more than half of its nitrogen fertilisers from the Middle East, but supply has been disrupted, leaving the country with about 600,000 tonnes less urea than it uses in a typical year. Farmers using less fertiliser this season may save money in the short term, but weaker soil nutrients could make the next planting cycle more difficult.
Well, that brings us to the end of Primetime. Please do join us again tomorrow for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.